kwaya niya na. Awan man niya nadlang niya na bon juga gimigaw ya. Nikschite mono dani bawiana noshkia dispetash tamano magaki migaw ya. So I'm very honored to be here before you today, and such a good introduction. And I thank all of you, and I congratulate you on your special day today, and so you could leave a legacy behind at this milestone event. And for me to participate with you is a great honor. I wrote a few things down because in my heart, in my mind, the connections that gives me the feelings to say the proper things and the right things with the protocols that we had as people to respect one another. I would like to be a person that is remembered for sharing and giving. Because we are all the same people, regardless if you have a number, and I don't have a number, we're still related, regardless. In the unity of nations, I was adopted by Dakota people as a son and a brother. And it's a good feeling. And like my friend here, Laurie, says, as we were traveling 12 hours to get here, we went along traditional homes of our people, our relatives. Regardless if there's a 49th parallel, you call it whatever line you want. My people, the Buffalo people, Limachif, they crossed that line without even knowing. The grass was the same color. And they were going out to hunt buffalo. And they had winter homes. These Iverna, they call them. Those people are still here. And across from me was a lady that I met today. She's a flurry. I knew there was flurries out here someplace. And I knew there was Laurence, which was my relatives. I knew there was Vermets and Morns, and there are relatives. So it's good to be here with family. And it's good to be here to share the most important things in our genetics, in our genealogy, is language. As a lot of the speakers that were here speaking this morning, they said the most wonderful words that you could use. I wrote some things down as they spoke, because a lot of things meant instrumental, preserving, perpetuating, beliefs, understanding. We have to compile and put those words so those words are used when we leave it to our grandchildren and our children. I met another lady over here that she said, I learned through you. So we learn through each other. Because we're givers and not takers. You know, like my friend here was saying, my mom, she passed away 4 years ago at 108. And her parents, they had the life of their ancestors. They were buffalo hunters, they were freighters, they were translators, they were communicators. My grandmother told me the story of the Battle of the Grand Couteau, which her parents were there. So those kind of things, they all said in their language, because our language is an oral language, first and foremost. So how do you preserve something through oral culture when our people are all gone, just about, the old people? So there's still myself, and you still have a lot of those rich stories. So we have to meet, and we have to put those stories in proper perspective. How do you take history that was never written and put it in a written form and make it part of a curriculum in teaching in schools. Where in the language there's protocols, there's certain things like legends you can't talk about when the snow's gone. Those were my teachings. And there's many, many, many things that I could be here for days and hours to talk about these kind of things. But these were all left for me to give. You know, it's really sad when you have relatives phone you from Toronto at 1 o'clock in the morning. They're either drunk or they're not in that state of mind to share something with them, and they say, "Uncle, who am I? Who are we?" So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to define ourselves through our language. We're trying to define ourselves through our history, our stories. It's sad when you, as a nation that had their own language for 6 generations in my case, and now we say there's only so many of us that are living speakers. And people are asking you for your teachings, your stories. So, with the writing system, a lot of people, when I started off on this venture, on this journey, which is more important, writing the language or speaking the language? If you want to do both, when we started off in Canada, our main resource was Belcourt, North Dakota, because they'd already started. And Patlin Lavarture and Ida Rose Allard, they're gone. John Crawford, the linguist, he's probably gone now too. But they left a legacy behind. It's a dictionary. But their writing system, I copied and made the first ever dictionary in Canada with my partner, Laurie Barclay. And we used that writing system. Lee, if you said Lee Garçon, Lee, we wrote with L-E-E, like Bruce Lee. Now, the linguist said maybe do the double vowel system because it's more consistent with Aboriginal languages. So we use the double vowel system, so we put Lee, L-I-I now. So it's the same Lee, but it's written different. So when I was in Saskatoon last week, and I worked with people that are educators, there were 17 women. They are all of, we don't know what word to use, Aboriginal ancestry, Native ancestry. Remember, those ancestries all have nations. We happen to be the Michifs. Some people call themselves Dakota, Lakota, Nakota. Some people will call themselves Ojibwe, Chippewa. Like when I asked my grandmother when I was a little boy, nobody ever asked, where does this language come from, Michif? Nobody ever did. We took it for granted. Only the Michif spoke Michif to each other. And when you spoke to somebody else, you spoke their language. That's why we were so universal and versatile in languages. When we go through on buffalo hunts, we'd go through different territories. If we went through the Dakota territory, we would say, "How are steda?" You know, we'd speak the language. And we'd tell them we wanted to be where we were hunting the buffalo, Tatanka. But when we went through, we didn't have as much problem with certain people because we were already related with the Chippewa or the other people. So they were with us on this hunting trip already. So that's why you see teepees sometime, because that's what they used. And that was quicker. They were the first mobile home. So some people slept under the Red River cart, but they spoke that language. They'd say, it's a good day. You know, it's nice. How are you today? And then you'd speak different languages like, there's the Michifs. We are the Michifs, but the carriers of language. There's communities that speak Michif that speak French, but it's the French of those Michifs. Comment ça va aujourd'hui? Toi, ça fait longtemps que je t'ai pas vu. You know, that's how they'll speak. And they say at home, that's the broken French. And then you'd have the French people and say, oh, bonjour, comment ça va? Qu'est-ce que tu fais aujourd'hui? You know, and you'd have that real French. We call it at home, the real French. And those were the Michif français, the Michif Sioux, the Michif Cree. So they were Michifs with a stronger background in Cree, so you were called Michif Cree, Michif Sioux, Michif Soto. And they used that term, les sauvages, the Michif, but it wasn't a derogatory term. Les sauvages were more the Soto and the Chippewa because they were the people of that land. They were called that in honor. But they would say les Pinois, that's the Blackfeet people. Les Cree. And they'd say les Sioux. We were familiar with those people. So when I asked my grandma, I said, I said, where does this language come from? So she said, she didn't tell me right away, because old people, when you ask them something, they'll say, I need a drink of water, please, I'm drying up. My metformin pills kicking in. I'm a diabetic. That's the new nation. So my grandmother would say, she says, you come tomorrow, I'll tell you. You visit here every morning anyway. We lived on the same quarter section land. She said, you'll come and eat. Merci. She said, because I said, Kokom, I said, okay, nobody else speaks like that but us. So next morning I went, she said, what you asked me, I thought about it, she said. You know le bon Dieu, she said, God, He created the world. Le bord la mer, over the waters, there's people there. Les Allemands en allemand bikskewak. Les Français en français bikskewak. Kishtanan there, she said. Les Sioux en Sioux bikskewak. Les Cree bikskewak. Kianan kskotaminan, it was our turn. Le bon Dieu gi oshivoya. God made us. God created us. So He gave us a language so we could understand each other. And that's the Michif language. He said it's a God-given language, it's a spiritual language, it's the language of the land. So it was given to a special people, just like other languages. So there's a lady that never went to school in her life. She was in her late 80s, and she told me what this Michif was. And she said, it's like creating the world in a circle. It was our turn to finish that circle as a people. So, for some lady that we say, those that never went to school didn't know nothing. That's not true. They have their PhDs in their own language, their own culture, their histories, their stories, their legends. They know it all, the protocols. There's no disease in our nationalities. There's no disease in who we are. We are pure people. We're still pure. We didn't lose all these things. We just set it aside. We just have to go and get them. And that's why we're here today. We're getting it from each other. So we got to hold our culture very strong. We have to hold it. The gentleman is talking about the relationship of the culture and the language. You cannot separate those. You cannot separate them. So when we're talking about the preservation of the language and how we do it through books, we have to do it that way now. That's where we've come to. We've evolved from talking and preserving our language through the hunt, through the winters, our winter stories. Now we have to do it through books. But there's not many of us still that are speakers back home. And when I first heard this linguist Peter Bakker come from, he's a Dutchman that lives in Aarhus and teaches in Aarhus at the University of Denmark. And he's saying, when I visited Canada and the United States, there might have been 1,000 speakers left about 30 years ago. Since that time, there's a lot of people have gone and they've taken the language with them, they've taken the stories, they've taken all that we want to know. And when he called our language an endangered species, it's on that list, I was wondering, what's that? You know? And then we tell ourselves, we had a reawakening. We took it for granted that everything was going good, till some stranger came and told us, if you lose that, who are you? What are you going to leave behind for your children, your grandchildren, when you lose that? Then we have to tell the governments how it's important for us because they've told us how to live. And they put us in residential schools and we lost everything. Cultural genocide, that's another word we've used. And we're saying, look, we want to take over. We've sat in this buggy too long and we want them reins. We want to guide it. And you know, a lot of that's been happening when the gentleman from Mr. Davis has been up here. He said how good it's been going since they've taken over it. And then at Rocky Boy. And that can happen. It's going to happen here too. Because it's happening in Canada. But when in Canada we were wondering, how can we do it also? We were there. So we have elders that are still living, that still speak the language back home. So they're my mentors. Even though I know the language. I phoned Victoria Janai, who was a de Montagny from St. John, North Dakota. Her parents came from there. I speak to Abrazo, who has relatives in North Dakota. I speak to people from Santa Clara, Boggy Creek, who they came from North Dakota. And some people who have relatives in Montana. I talk to them. When I talk, I don't talk to them like I'm talking to you. I talk in Michif. Tanshikianush. How are you today? I swear, it really rained a lot last night. It's going to snow soon. The ducks and the geese are going home. And we'll say things like, the crows are back. It's good. You know, so it's all in our language. Everything's in our language. But we just don't have a terminology, like a medical terminology in place and a legal terminology. We don't have the curriculum. We say, well, we got lots of things. We got to compile it to fit the people, the older people that want to learn the language. We've done a lot of work. We got the body parts. We've got some of the stories. But we don't have all the legends. We don't have all the songs together. We have so many things. But when I was in Saskatoon, the people, the educators want to know. They want it at the university level. Then for the Gabriel Dumont Institute, we've done so much work that they become a recognized institution. And at the Louis Riel Institute, I worked there and did a lot of work. Now the general public, I've taught in Métis communities, about 6 of them. And then we have those people in the school like St. Lazare, Manitoba, in Canada, where I was born and raised. There's 60% plus Métis people in that school, Imachif, and there's hardly anything for them there. Their stories, their history. No, they're asking me if I could help them develop curriculum to meet the needs of our people, like we're trying to do here. So when we talk about resources, they're there. We talk about the who, what, when, where, and how. If you use the 5WH system. And you ask yourselves, we were called by different nations. They knew who we were. The Soto people, the Chippewa used to call us Aptawushanak. Aptawushis is half of my son. They'd also call us Wisakodainin. It means half burned wood, not quite burnt. So those are the Bois-Brûlés. And the Dakota people called us Iteskana, white foreheads. Because buffalo hunting, the Métis wore hats. When they took the hat off, this was white, that was brown. So they call us the white foreheads. They also called us Auzi, yellow under the arm, because you had buckskin and this would. So very descriptive. And the Assiniboine call us Sahada, because the Michif people used to have willow canes and well decorated, so we were the people of the canes. And the Cree called us Katipemsuchik. We are owners of our own destiny. So we were known by other nations. We still are known by other nations. Because we were a separate, very unique group of people who took the best of both worlds and made something good. And we survived for a long time. We still eat la galette, bannock. We still drink le bouillon, broth. We still do different things. Other things too we adapt really well. I've been to sun dances. I've been to different ceremonies. But I'm still a Catholic. I'm still a Michif. But we learn to respect other nations. When you see the flags here, it makes you proud that you've included your nation. And if you don't include your nation, when you go to grand entries, my son and I were invited for the first time in a Dakota reserve. You say reservation, here we say reserve, and we say res. But my son and I, we went and we danced. We took our flag in. My son said, "Dad, this is nice. I like to dance." Well, we can do that. We'll make our regalia to fit the occasion. We'll put our sashes and we'll build a nice suit out of our sashes and whatever we're proud to wear. I've got moccasins with the infinity sign on it, and I've got with the sash. So you've got to make it fit that occasion. You don't separate yourself for anything, you include yourself. And that's what's so good about being a Michif. You can fit in anywhere. You can also, you'll be like when we used to talk about stories about Nana Bush and Wisagechak and Chijan. You talked about things and you said, I was there too. And this is what we did. So we can go on to the relationship of us in different, we don't call that 49th parallel, we're related to you. You know? Makwazin Kildal, Montana. My cousin lives in Montana. You know? Niewutanawi Kindal, Canada. I live here in Canada. But we can't say all the names because we don't know all the names. But we'll say Canada, Lizita, or Kshimokoman. They say the long knife country. So yeah, we still use that terminology. So with all that, I'm probably going to say, when I go and sit down, you should have said this. You could have said that. But I'm trying to say to all of us that with all of this, we have to think positive. We have a lot of stories that are sad stories. But I think we have to build on that and make beautiful stories. of meeting each other and celebrating, and we're going ahead. And you're going to get there with our help. If I could come and help you somehow, and God permits, I always say God, to help us. Thank you.
Before we could have your attention for just a little while longer, before I wrap it up, you know, I want everyone here to know that all of this material
Hi, Francis.
is given to us
Not too shabby.
graciously by
Can I
our
get through there?
relatives from Canada, and they gave it to us to put into our archives. One of our projects that we designed as a group on the Language Program Advisory Board and the staff was to build an archives. And we have purchased cabinets and so forth, and we're building an archive room upstairs. We don't know how long we'll be in this building. It belongs to the tribe, of course, but we may buy another building, who knows, or whatever, if we get lucky, get federal recognition and so forth. But also, another important thing that we've done is we've written into the project we're going to teach our children, and right now we're starting with high school kids here shortly, and our adults, to operate cameras. And Mr. Craig Vinsel here is going to offer a class. We'll announce the class. We're going to teach people how we've bought $12,000 worth of a camera, professional photography equipment that we'll be using. And we're going to teach the students and adults to use it. Students will use it, will use it to record stories from their family. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Verman, who will close it off.
Well, just want to, we're going to bring this part to the close, and I want to thank everybody. I guess it's just pretty magnificent to have a sense of the fullness of it all. And there's more to come, so stay tuned. And let me turn it over to Chairman Gray here.
Okay, in closing, what we'll do is adjourn the meeting, the official quarterly meeting, but I would like to say what a great day, historical day for the Little Shell people. As I said earlier, when we build alliances and we come together as Indian people, we can do anything, and we are going to do something. So with that, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn the meeting. A second?
A second.
Okay, the quarterly meeting is adjourned, and I'd also, right now, before we eat, ask Mr. Fleury to come up. If he could bless the food and the building for us, we'd really appreciate that.